Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Today you're going to find out the weaknesses of your brother. some of the weaknesses of your brother. Inshallah, we skipped some of these sections that we're going to hit today due to reasons, right? Which we'll get to, inshallah. This section, we just got through speaking about the i'rab of the fil madi, the i'rab of the fil mudari, and the i'rab of the fil amr. And we said that the amr and the madi are both mabni. And we talked about how they were mabni. Mabni ala sukun, mabni ala thubut an-nun, mabni ala, or whatever the case might be. Mabni ala fat, mabni ala this or that. And there were different ways. Mabni ala hadaf harfa illa, and so forth. Then we talked about the mudari, how it is mu'rab, all except if we add the nun at-tawkid or if we add the nun an-niswa, then it becomes mabni in those two cases. Everything else from the fi'l mudari is mu'rab, meaning it changes when the particles of nasab or jazm appear in front of them. Now this next section, al-i'rab al-mahalli, and I don't know how to translate this word mahalli as a word. It's rather a sentence, right? Meaning the i'rab of a state, right, that is not apparent, basically. So let's read the qaida and then we'll look at the examples. We'll pull up the examples from the actual book for a lot of these chapters today to make it make more sense. So إذا وقعت كلمة مبنية في موضع من مواضع الرفع أو النصب أو الجر أو الجزم. So if a word which is mabni, huh?
That ain't on the screen. It's not on the screen.
It's on my screen. It's not on your screen. Okay. It's on my screen.
Okay, it's not on my screen.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about that. I don't know what to tell you.
You got it. I got it there. Let's go.
So if إذا وقعت كلمة مبنية, if a mabni word falls in a place في موضع من مواضع الرفع, a place from the places of raf or nasb or jar or jazm, in one of those four cases, it falls in a place where it should be marfu, or it is mansub, or it is majrur, or it is majzoom. Any word, but that word is mabni, right? It should be marfu, or mansub, or majrur, or majzoom. لا يتغير آخرها, and its ending does not change, meaning it's mabni. ويقال, and it is said about it, إنها في محل رفع أو نصب أو جر أو جزم, that it is in the position of being marfu, or mansub, or majrur, or majzoom, على حسب موضعه أو موضعها في الجملة, according to its position in the sentence. So what does that mean? We got four examples that were given to us in the book. This first sentence, أنت رجل مهذب. أنت رجل مهذب. You are a well-mannered man, right? You are a well-mannered man. This anta here is your mubtada. Whenever we have a noun, whenever we have a sentence begins with a noun, it's made up of a mubtada and a khabar. So this anta is a mubtada, and the mubtada is always what? Marfu'. The mubtada is always marfu'. But anta here, and we know that our sign of our original sign, or our stock, our base sign is a dhamma. But here we have anta. Anta is a pronoun, which we're going to get to inshallah ta'ala, a dhamir, and dhama'ir are mebni. Remember the rule. If a word which is mebni falls in a place from the places where it should be one of those four cases. So anta is the mubtada and it should be marfu'. But we know that it's mebni and it's mebni on that fatha. So we would say anta damirun munfasilun, a separate pronoun. Mebni al-fath. It is mebni upon this fatha here, right? Fi mahal raf, in the position or in the condition of being marfu', even though it is mebni. Is mebni al-fath fi mahal raf, in the position of being marfu'. It is marfu', but because it's mebni, we don't get to see that sign. So we say fi mahal raf, in the position or in the condition of being marfu', even though we don't see it. The same thing in the second sentence. Sa'adtu ha'ulai. I helped ha'ulai al-masakin. I helped these poor people. I helped these. These, ha'ulai, is maf'ulun bihi. It's the object of my help. And the maf'ulun bihi is always what? What case is maf'ulun bihi always? Mansub. It's always going to be mansub. Sa'adtu ha'ulai. But ha'ulai again is another damir, or is a ismul ishara rather. Ismul ishara, not a damir. It's a ismul ishara. The ismul ishara are mebni. As we said, some of the asma, some of the nouns are mebni, although most of them are mu'rab. But from those that are mebni, right, if we wanted to make a chart, we could start to make a chart and would fill it in as we go. Asma mebniya. We could start to make us a chart, right? We could say asma mebniya, and we could put a chart. We could say, right, dama'ir. Dama'ir. Dama'ir are mebni. Also, asma al-ishara are mebni. Right? And I'm not writing nicely, but they're mebni. And we could go on, right? Certain words are mebni. We could make us a list inside of our notebook so that we know which words are mebni. Anyway, ha'ulai here is the maf'ulun bihi. It should be mansub, but it is mebni ala kasra. And we were looking for a word yesterday which was mebni ala kasra. Here we go. Mebni ala kasra. It's never going to change. So we would say ha'ulai ismul ishara mebni ala kasra fi mahal al-nasb. Fi mahal al-nasb. Fi mahal. It's in the condition of being mansub, even though we're not going to say maf'ulun bihi mansub. We're not going to say that. We're going to say ha'ulai is ismul ishara. It is mebni fi mahal raf, in the condition of being nasb, fi mahal nasb, in the condition of being mansub. The next one, ataftu ala hadha al-marid. Ataftu ala hadha al-marid. The main point here is ala hadha. Ala is a harf jar, as we learned yesterday or the day before, or as we reviewed yesterday or the day before, that it is a harf jar, making the noun after it majroor. But hadha, another ismul ishara, is mebni ala sukun. This is a sukun on his ha, on his aleph. We don't have anything on it. It's a sukun. We say mebni ala sukun. Fi mahal al-jar. Fi mahal al-jar. In the position of being majroor. But we don't get to see a kasra there, which is the stock sign or the base sign of jar, because it's mebni. The same thing, la tashrabanna al-ma'a al-kadir. La tashrabanna, don't drink dirty water or muddy water. Kadr, al-ma al-kadr. Tashrabanna has the noon at-tawkeed on it. Has the noon at-tawkeed. Right? La tashrab would be it. Here, tashrabanna, because of the noon at-tawkeed, it is mabni ala fatha. Is mabni ala fatha. Right? However, this is the la of An-Nahw, which means it should be majzoom. It should be majzoom. If I didn't have that on it, I would say la tashrab, and I would put a sukoon on the ba. But because of the noon at-tawkeed, emphasizing, giving even more emphasis, do not drink dirty water or muddy water, it's mabni al-fath fi mahal al-jazm. We don't get to see the jazm there because of the noon at-tawkeed, right? But it is in the mahal al-jazm. So that's what it means by al-i'rab al-muhalli. The qaida again, إذا وقعت, if a kalimatun mabniyatun falls, if a word which is mabni falls fi mawdu'in, in a place min mawadi al-raf wal-nasb wal-jar wal-jazm, la yataghayyaru akhiruha, then it's, if it falls in one of these places, it's not going to change. Why? Because it's mabni. ويقال, and it is said, إنها في محل الرف, it is in the position of being rough, in the condition or the position of being rough. Mahal is a place, right? Mahal is a place. It's also like you call it like mahal al-asir, for example, the place of juice, like a store for juice or a store for material or a store for shoes. Mahal is like a place. It's in a place of being marfu' or mansub or jar or jazm, like this, according to the position that it's in the sentence. Is that clear?
No.
Oh, yeah. Aha. Let me scroll down here so we have our examples ready for us if we need them, which we will. Right? Some of the things, they get complicated, and some of the things are easier. Al-fasl, al-mudari', al-mu'tal al-akhir, wa ahwalu i'rabihi. The fi'l mudari', which has a weak ending. Mu'tal al-akhir, weak ending, meaning it has an aleph, a waw, or a ya at the end. And what are its states of, the states of its i'rab? What are the states of its i'rab? The qaida, as we said, why did we learn that there are verbs which have a sound ending and verbs which have a weak ending? Because the i'rab of them is going to be different. Those with the sound ending, we've already went through them. The sound ending verbs, we've already went through them, right? They're marfu' or dhamma or with thubut noon or this or that, right? Basically, the fi'l mudari' is only going to have, and it should be al-fi'l mudari', not a fasl, I believe. Let me look. Yeah, al-fi'l. That's a mistake inside the PDF. Al-fi'lu al-mudari', the present tense verb, right? So now, the fi'l mudari', which has a sahih ending, is going to be marfu' on a dhamma or be thubut noon, right? And it's going to be mansub. It's going to be mansub with a fatha or bi hadafi noon. It's going to be majzoom with a sukoon or bi hadafi noon. And the noon in this was going to make it mabni, or the noon, if I put the noon at-tawkeed on there, is going to make it mabni. Now, that's the case for the fi'l mudari', which we went over the other day. Now, that's for the sound ending. Now, what happens for the weak ending? This is our discussion here. الفعل المضارع المعتل الآخر, the present tense verb which has a weak ending, يرفع بضمة مقدرة على الألف والواو والياء. Then it is مرفوع with a dhamma, which is hidden from us, or it's given to us as an estimation. We're gonna say it's on a dhamma even though we don't get to see it, whether the weak ending is an alif, a waw, or a ya. And we're gonna go through the examples inshallah. وينصب بفتحة مقدرة على الألف, and it is mansub with a fatha, which is estimated or just given to us here when there's an alif, and it is a fatha which is clear, ظاهرة, it appears, al-waw wal-ya. And that if it is mansub and the last letter is a waw or a ya, then we're going to see that fatha. But if it's an alif at the end, we're not going to see that fatha. And it's yuzam bi hadaf al-akhir, and it is majzoom by dropping the weak letter when it's majzoom. So now let's look at our examples. And we got 27 examples. Maybe we don't need them all. طيب. This first section is what we want to look at first. First section. Right? يتغذى الغلام. يتغذى meaning he gets nourishment, right? He is getting nourishment. Al-Ghulam. Yattaghadha. This is an alif. It's not a ya. It's an alif maksura. An alif maksura and an alif, they have the same ruling. Here, this is a present tense verb. There's nothing in front of it to make it mansub or majzoom, so therefore it's majzoom. It's marfu'. It's marfu' because there's nothing in front of it to make it mansub or majzoom. So it's marfu'. But because of this alif here, we're not able to see the dhamma. Yattaghadha. It should be like yattaghadha u. But an alif, if we remember, it never ever holds a vowel. It never holds a vowel. Now we might put one for reading purposes, but really this alif is a hamzatul wasl. It's just you pass over it if you have the ability to do so. The only time it becomes able to hold a vowel is when it has a hamza on it. And then it's no longer called an alif, it's called a hamza. So an alif by itself is not able to hold a vowel. So it says يَتَّغَذَّى الْغُلَامِ. That dhamma, which I have written on top of the alif there, it doesn't appear because it's an alif and the alif can't hold a vowel. أخشى.
So, question.
Fadlam.
Yeah, that's an alif?
It's not a ya, it's an alif maksura. It does not, it does not, we don't say yattaghadhayi. It's an alif maksura.
You said it had the same rule.
It's the same rule because it's an alif maksura. It's not a ya. A ya has dots.
Oh, so you're saying that Aleph Maksura, okay, have the same rule for Aleph.
Right. Aleph Maksura.
Right. I'm thinking you're saying it's the same as the Ya.
No. Aleph Maksura and the Aleph have the same rulings. Yattaghadha al-Ghulam. That Ya, or that, not Ya, the Aleph Maksura there, the Aleph prevents it from holding the sign of marfu' because the Aleph cannot hold a vowel. Yeah. Same thing as in Akhsha al-Bard. I fear the cold. Akhsha, that's an alif there. It's not Kha, Sheen, Ya. It's Kha, Sheen, Alif, Maksura, Alif. So that Akhsha, we do not get to see the Dhamma. Right? We do not get to see the Dhamma because of the Alif. وَلِمَاذَا تَنْسَى وَعْدَكَ. Why do you forget your promises? Tansa, this is an Aleph. We do not get to see the Dhamma on there because the Aleph cannot hold a vowel. Right? The Aleph does not have the ability to hold a vowel. So we don't get to see it. So we would say يتغذى فعل مضارع مرفوع بضمة مقدرة. We say it is a fi'l mudari, a present tense verb. Marfu', it is marfu' because there's nothing in front of it to change it. Even if there was something in front of it, what was in front of it doesn't change it. Marfu' bidhamma muqaddara. It is marfu' with a dhamma which is muqaddara because it's impossible. And you can say lita'adhur. You can say this because it's excused from it. There's more words you can add to it as you get deeper into it. But right now, the main thing is the Aleph does not hold it, so it's impossible. So it's marfu' with a dhamma muqaddara. The second set of examples, 4, 5, and 6 here. Anta tandu mina al-khabash wa yasfu tandu. I said tednu. I said tendu. Tednu min al-khabash wa yasfu al-jaw wa ya'du al-hisan. All of these have this wow, and they are present tense verbs. They're present tense verbs, and they don't have anything in front of them that would change them. Enta is here, but enta won't change it, right? So there's nothing in front of it that's going to change it from being marfu'. So they're marfu', but because of the wow, we don't get to see the sign of marfu' because it's difficult to do so. It's hard to say, and again, a lot of these things are difficult for us because we're non-Arabs. So we're not talking about what's difficult for me and you, what we get to say and not say. We're talking about for the Arab tongue, what's difficult for them. And so therefore, the rule applies to what's difficult upon them, not what's difficult for us. Because a lot of words might be difficult for us. Or maybe there may be something that's difficult for the Arab, but because there's something in our language which we say on a regular basis, that it's easy for us. So why would they cut that off? It's easy for us because of something in our language, but it's difficult for them. So we're using the Arabs as the measure here, not us, right? But it's difficult to say tednuwu. Try to say tednu versus tednuwu. It's difficult. Yasfuwu. Yasfuwu. It even sounds funny. Ya'duwu. Ya'duwu. It's hard to say that. So because of the difficulty, they just drop it off and they say this is a fi'l mudari, a present tense verb, marfu' bi dhamma muqaddara. And then they add because of mushaqqa, because of the difficulty, for that's later on. But this is a dhamma muqaddara. So if you have a weak verb, meaning the end of it, a fi'l mu'tal al-akhir, its ending is weak, right? Has an alif, a waw, or a ya. If it has a waw, then it is marfu' with a dhamma muqaddara. The same thing for here.
So
go ahead.
So whenever they have the wow, it's usually, I see, because there's a dhamma in front of it with the noon and the fa and the dal. But we're not going to see the marfu because it would have been one over the wow. Right.
You're not going to see it over the wow. That wow is part of the verb. Dal, noon, wow is the root. Sod, fa, wow is the root. Ain, da, wow is the root.
So the reason we won't see it because you said it's cut on their tongue to say nu or whatever you say.
Right, ted nuwu. It's difficult to say. Ted nuwu. Yasfuwu. Okay. Ya'duwu. Right? Like we said, a lot of things might be difficult for us anyway. Right? Yasfu might be difficult in and of itself, for example, or akhaf. Right? The kha is difficult for us maybe, or something with an ayn. Right? Something with an ayn, we can't just start cutting stuff off because it's difficult for us. So we're talking about what's difficult for the Arabs. But this in itself is even difficult for us. It's a difficulty to say tadnuwu. Yes, fawu. You gotta move your mouth in a way to make it happen, which makes it difficult. Ya'duwu. You know? But so you won't see it because of the difficulty. But it doesn't matter whether it's difficult or not. If your verb ends in a vowel, right? If it's a weak verb ending in a vowel and it's marfu', you're not going to write a dhamma on top of it. Why is that? Because it's difficult. The Y is just extra for us. The same thing down here in 789. Ashtahi. And even though you don't see the dots, Abdullah, these are yas. You have to remember the Arabs didn't always write dots and didn't always write vowels. So you have to learn what's a ya and what's not. But we'll write them here for our purposes. So we say ashtahi. This is a ya. Ashtahi at-ta'am. I crave food. Yajri al-ma. Water is running. Ya'wi al-dhib. The wolf is howling. Right? All of
in pronunciation, we wouldn't just carry that over. Ashtahit ta'am.
Ashtahit ta'am. Yes.
Okay.
But why are we doing that? Because the ya is part of the verb, so we're just going to skip over a whole letter. But why? Because it's difficult to say ashtahiyu, yajriyu, ya'wiyu. There should be a dhamma here. Right? Because it's a present tense verb. And present tense verbs are marfu' with a dhamma, right? But because of the ya, we don't get to see the dhamma, so we say marfu' with a dhamma muqaddara. With a dhamma which is implied, basically, right? Because we don't put it on this ya because it's difficult to pronounce.
Now, when you have a ya, like the letter before that, is it always going to have a kasra?
Possibly, probably, because the just like in yataghadha, akhsha, and tansa, Aleph is known for a fatha, and a waw is known for it's accompanied with a dhamma, and a ya is accompanied with a kasra. Doesn't mean it's always going to be that way, not necessarily, but the rule is going to be that way. Tayyib. Now, let's look at the second set of examples. These are all marfu'. This first set of examples are marfu'. Marfu' with a dhamma muqaddara. On the Aleph, the waw, and the ya. As our rule says. Right? It is marfu' with a dhamma muqaddara on the Aleph, the waw, and the ya. Right? Now, the second set. أود أن يتغذى الغلام يجب أن أخشى البرد لا تنسى وعدك. Here we have an, and len. And an and len are from those things which make the present tense verb mansoob. Right? But because of the Aleph, we don't see the sign of nasb. Because an Aleph cannot hold a vowel. Right? So, يتغذى أن يتغذى فعل منصوب فعل مضارع منصوب بفتحة مقدرة. أن أخشى فعل مضارع منصوب بفتحة مقدرة. لن تنسى فعل مضارع منصوب بفتحة مقدرة. Because we do not get to see it on an Aleph, because Aleph cannot hold a vowel. The next set, أخاف أن تدنو. We can say it here, not written on the first example. That might just be a bad copy. But it's written on the others. أن يسفو وأن يعدو. This an and len, again, they're particles making it mansoob. But the waw and the ya, they are able to hold a fatha. They're not an aleph, and it's not difficult. It's not difficult to say tadnuwa like it is to say tadnuwu. Just try it. Say it to yourself. Say it out loud. Say tadnuwu and say tadnuwa and see which one's easier on your mouth. Tadnuwa is easy. So because of that, because of the possibility and the lack of difficulty, and the waw and the ya can hold vowels unlike the aleph, then it is mansoob with a dhamma zahira. It's apparent. We get to see it. We get to see it. Right? We get to see it. So when you have a fi'l mudari', you have a present tense verb, al-mu'tal al-akhir, its ending is weak with a waw. If it's mansoob, you get to see it. But a dhamma bi dhamma zahira. Right? The same thing comes from lan ashtahiya at-ta'am. Uhibbu an yajri al-ma. Lan ya'wiya al-dhi'b. All of these again, we get to see the fatha. Number one, because the ya holds the fatha unlike the aleph, as well as it's not difficult to say yajriyu versus yajriya. Try it. Yajriyu, yajriya. See which one's easier. Ya'wiyu, ya'wiya. Ashtahiyu, ashtahiya. You'll see that it's possible. It doesn't have that same difficulty to say it, so therefore we can see it, and our rule is وَيُنْصَبْ بِفَتَّةٍ مُقَدَّرَةٍ عَلَى الْأَلَفِ. Right? وَظَاهِرَ عَلَى الْوَاوِ وَالْيَاءِ. وَالظَّاهِرَ عَلَى الْوَاوِ وَالْيَاءِ. So when it is mansoob, if it has an aleph, we're going to say it's mansoob bifatta muqaddara. Muqaddara, because of the difficulty or the impossibility of appearing on the aleph. However, zahira al waw wal ya, because there's no mashaqqa, there's no difficulty, right? Now a third set of examples. We have to scroll down. We got to be across 2 pages here. Give me a second. طيب. Hopefully we can see number 1. Lam yataghadha al-ghulam. Lam is a particle of jazm. So how does it become majzoom? It becomes majzoom by dropping the weak letter. Lam akhsha. Lam is a particle of jazm. How does it become majzoom? By dropping the particle of, and I put 2 dots on that first one. Right? It should just be a ya, aleph. Lam akhsha. Right? Al-barad is majzoom by dropping the weak letter. La tansa, same thing. Dropped weak letter. La, this is the la of prohibition. La an-Nahw. So how do we make it majzoom? By dropping the weak letter. All of these, la tadnu, we drop the weak letter. La yasfu, we drop the weak letter. La ya'du, drop the weak letter. And if we go down to the last set of examples, lam ashtahi, we drop the ya. Right? Lam yajri, we drop the ya. Lam ya'wi, we drop the ya. So if it is a weak verb, present tense with a weak ending, it's majzoom bihadf al-akhir, bihadf harf al-illa, by dropping the weak letter. Is that clear? I know it's a lot, but it's less than what's coming. And this is what's coming right here. This next section is not bad. This section here, alhamdulillah, we can handle. It's the section after this that's difficult. Al-ismu al-mu'tal al-akhir. The noun which has a weak ending, meaning it has an aleph, a waw, or a ya. Right? An aleph, a waw, or a ya. The nouns which have a weak ending. Let me scroll down here to our examples. So when it comes up, they'll be present for us. Oh, yep. Let me scroll. Come on, scroll up. There we go. The rule. Al-Maksur wa ahwaluhu i'rab. Okay. I'rabihi. It is Maksur is when there's an Aleph at the end. Al-Maksur, so we know Al-Maksuru huwa kullu ismin mu'rabin akhiruhu alifun lazimatun. It is a noun which the end of it is an Aleph. Meaning the Aleph has to be there. Whether it's an Aleph or an Aleph Maksura. And this is called Aleph Maksura. This is called Aleph Mamduda. Prolonged. It's prolonged and this is shortened or whatever, right? Aleph Maksura, Aleph Mamduda. Doesn't matter. They're both Alephs. Right? So it applies to both of these. If that Aleph applies to the end of a noun that is mu'rab, right? Not like, for instance, huma. Huma is a damir. And this is an Aleph at the end. But it is not mu'rab because dama'ir are mebni. So we're not talking about those. We're talking about nouns which can have the i'rab on them. Right? So that's what a maksur is. A maksur, ismul maksur, is a noun with an Aleph at the end. That's the definition. Rule 39. Rule 40. تقدر على آخر المقصور حركات الإعراب الثلاثة. Then all of them are going to be implied, whether it's mansub or marfu' or majroor, because there is no majzoom for nouns. Majroor is khas or specific to nouns, while jazm is specific to verbs. That was one of our rules. So the i'rab al-thalatha, meaning marfu', mansub, and majroor. The sign is going to be muqaddar because of the Aleph. Alephs do not hold vowels. Remember? Example. Najal fata min al-gharaq. The young boy was saved from drowning, basically. Right? He was saved from da'at al-asa. The asa, the stick, was lost. Right? Nadani al-adha. Basically, pain reached me, right? Or came to me. Shamita bi al-ida. I don't remember what that means right there. I don't remember what that means. Anyway. Naja al-fata min al-gharaq. All of these, al-fata, al-asa, al-adha, and al-ida. All of these are fa'ils here. The boy was saved. The stick was lost. The pain came to me. They're all fa'il. And the fa'il is always what? What case is it?
What the hell?
No, what case is a file? A file. Is it mansub, marfu', majzoom, majroor? What case is it?
That's it. With the fatah.
The fa'il, the doer of the verb.
Oh.
It's always what? Marfu'.
Yeah.
If we had our list and we had paid attention and made our list, we'd say from the marfu'at, we would have the fa'il there. And the marfu'at. And the mansubat would be maf'ulun bihi. So this is the file. It is marfu'. But because of the alif, we do not get to see the dhamma. It is a dhamma. So we say fata fa'il marfu' bi dhamma muqaddara. Fa'il marfu'. Abu Sumayya, you talking to us? فاعل مرفوع بضمة مقدرة. Right? فاعل مرفوع فاعل مرفوع فاعل مرفوع. bidamma muqaddara, because this alif is not able to hold a verb, a vowel. Najaytu al-fata min al-gharq. Basically, I saved the fata. Fata here is maf'ulun bihi. Ada'tu al-asa. I lost the stick. What was lost? The stick. Who did I save? The fata. Both of these are maf'ulun bihi. Mana'tu al-adha. I prevented the sickness. What did I prevent? The sickness. Maf'ulun bihi. La tushmit bi al-ida. And again, I don't remember this meaning of this sentence, so I'm not going to say it. But the point here is that they're all maf'ulun bihis, but they all have an aleph at the end, and that aleph cannot hold a vowel. So even though it's mansub bi fatha muqaddara. Same thing at the end. Raditu an al-fata. An is a harf jar, making the noun after it majroor. Right? Ala al-asa. Ala is a harf jar. Right? Making it majroor. Min al-adha. Making it majroor. It's harf jar. Ala al-ida. All of these are harf jars, making the noun after them majroor, but because they end in an aleph, and an aleph does not hold a vowel, we say ismu majroor bi kasra muqaddara. So the rule, right? تقدر على الآخر المقصور حركات الإعراب الثلاث. That the noun which is weak, which has a weak ending, meaning has an aleph, a waw, or a ya at the end of it. Right? That's what this is. But here, maqsoor means the aleph at the end. The aleph at the end. Right? It's going to be marfu' bi damma muqaddara, mansub bi fatha muqaddara, maqsoor bi kasra, or majroor, I said maqsoor, majroor bi kasra muqaddara. Is that clear?
No.
طيب. The next rule, and this will be the last one for the day. It says, al-manqus. Al-manqus. What is manqus? Huwa kullu ismin mu'rabin. Yasin. Okay. Akhiruhu ya. Lazima. Maqsurun ma qablaha. Okay, it is. This is the definition of manqus. Manqus is every noun which is mu'rab. Again, if we have a noun with a ya at the end of it and before it is a kasra, right? But it's mabni, then it doesn't matter. So I'm not sure if there is one, but I'm just saying. Every noun which is mu'rab, not something which is mabni, and the end of it is a ya, while before it is a kasra. That's called mankus. A noun which the ending has a ya and before it is a kasra. And we're going to have examples to show us. And there are plenty. What happens to it? Let's read the examples first. Let's go down. Al-manqus. Farr al-jani. Here, even though the dots are not written. Right? Even though the dots are not written. Farr al-jani. Adal al-qadi. Nada al-munadi. Yandamul al-baghi. Here, all of these are marfu'. All of these are marfu'. They are marfu', right? But because of this ya in the kasra preceding it, it has a rule. But these are the fa'il. All of these here are the fa'il. And we can see that they have a ya with a kasra in front of it. If we look to the second one, the second set of examples, حبست الجاني نحترم القاضي. But we can say الجانية القاضية. سمعت المنادية يكره الناس الباغية. Here it's mansoob, right? Because they're the maf'ulun bihi. Here they're marfu'. When they're marfu', we don't get to see anything as we see here. But on the mansoob, we get to see the fatha. Then we say نظرت إلى الجاني. I'll put the dots. قمنا إجلال للقاضي. أصغيت إلى المنادي. And على الباغي تدور الدوائر. على الباغي. Now let's look at our rule and see what we saw from there. تقدر الضمة والكسرة على الآخر المنقوص في حالتي الرفع والجر. So we see here, when it's majroor over here, right? We don't get to see the sign of jar. Janiyi, qadiyi, munad. We don't see that. Rather, it's muqaddara. So we say here, for instance, al-jani fa'il marfu' bidamma muqaddara. Al-qadi fa'il marfu' bidamma muqaddara. And likewise for the next two. نظرت إلى الجاني. جاني اسم مجرور بكسرة مقدرة. Right? للقاضي قاضي مجرور بكسرة مقدرة. And likewise for the next two. However, حسبت الجانية. جانية مفعول به منصوب بفتحة ظاهرة. As our rule says, is تقدر الضمة والكسرة, right? أما النصب وأما النصب, as for when it's منصوب فيكون فتحة ظاهرة على الآخر. Then the fatha is apparent at the end of it, right? Because it's not difficult. And in the text here, if I go down, it just talks about the difficulty of this and why that is and so on and so forth in the bath, right? To say munadi, munadiyu, it's difficult versus munadi, munadiyu, it makes it a little more difficult. Al-janiyi, it's difficult. But al-janiya, al-qadiya, that's easy. So it's easy. So due to the difficulty here in the marfu and the majroor, when it is mankus, mankus meaning it has a ya with a kasra before it, at the end of it. This is mankus, right? Are there any questions about this? And I'll give you another thing, and just because we have a couple minutes left, I'll give you another thing. Whenever you take the Aleph Lam off of these, you also lose your ya. So you would say, for instance, qadin. Qadin. Right? Janin. Right? Janin. Munadin. Bagin. You would lose your ya, and this is just something else. Maybe I shouldn't have added it to make it too difficult. Anyway, this is what's difficult that we're going to reach till tomorrow. This is actually the section that we skipped over. We're going to try to cover it a little bit, just so we cover the rules. However, we're not going to worry too much about a lot of understanding. Whatever we understand from it, we understand from it, because it's the most difficult chapter in Nahw. They say, like in Alfiyat Ibn Malik, they say that this chapter is the one that has confused the Arabs the most. So we're going to go over it, just touch on it. Whatever we get from it, we get from it. We're not going to say it's too difficult to get it, though, because it's only as difficult. If we spent as much time on these next section, this Nisbu Mudar bi an al-Mudmira. If we spent 30 hours on this or 50 hours on this chapter, then we'll get it. And it'll be easy for us. But we don't spend 50 hours on it. We just spend a little time. Because we say, why spend 50 hours? But maybe we need to spend 50 hours on it. So Allah knows best what we'll do in the future. We might spend 50 hours on it, right? But this is a difficult chapter, which we're going to address tomorrow. But inshallah ta'ala, after that, it gets easier. After this, it gets easier. We start getting into easier subjects. Today was a little difficult, right? And tomorrow, the beginning of it will be difficult. But inshallah, after that, the review will become easy once again. Bi'idhnillah. Are there any questions of what we covered today? The ismu, the al-ismu al-mu'tal al-akhir is the nouns that have a weak letter at the end. If it has an aleph at the end, it's called maksur. And if it has a ya at the end, it's called mankus. Right? And the rulings, we just need to remember. Then you have the fi'l mudari al-mu'tal al-akhir wa ahwal i'rabihi. What happens when the verb, or the present tense verb, has a weak ending? What happens to it? Here, right? All of this is with practice. We'll get it. And then the last one we had was the first thing we had really, but the last thing we're reviewing real quick is the i'rab al-mahalli, is when something is in the place of being marfu or majzoom or mansub or majroor, but it is mabni. So we talked about what happens then. We say that this is mabni fi mahal raf, mabni fi mahal nasb, mabni fi mahal jar, mabni fi mahal jazm. Right? We got it?
No.
Inshallah. It's just review, review, review. And the more we read books and the more we read and we pay attention to these things, then the more, inshallah ta'ala, it will become clear to us. If there's no questions, then we'll conclude for today, inshallah ta'ala. Wa fikum barakallah.
I just want to clarify one thing.
Huh?
I just want to ask one question.
Faddal.
For the mankus is for dhahir only for the fatha, and for the kasra and for the dhamma it's not there.
For the mankus, if it is the dhamma or the kasra, then it's muqaddara. Then we say it is implied. We don't get to see it. Right? We don't get to see it. It's implied. Far al-jani. We don't say jani you. It's implied, but we don't get to see it. Right? And same thing with the kasra. But as for the fatha, when it's mansub, then we get to see it. That answered it? And inshallah, when I type up the rules today, then you could go back over the book, inshallah ta'ala, and it'll become clearer to you, inshallah ta'ala. Tayyib. Jazakumullah khairan ya akhwan. I'll see you tomorrow with the most difficult section for us. But we're going to work on it in the future, and it's going to become the easiest section for us, inshallah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.